Okay, so before I say anything, keep in mind that I am not in any way qualified to talk about the subject. These are just my opinions and some things that I thought about, and especially while being in San Francisco and listening to a bunch of podcasts, I have come to this weird, not even conclusion, but thought, and I wanted to open the discussion up, but that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to put this forward and nothing else, no political commentary or anything else. So what is communism and what was it before too? Communism in theory aims for a stateless, classless society where property and the means of production is basically owned collectively by everyone, like factories, everything is owned collectively. And everyone would contribute according to their ability and desires, and they will receive according to their needs. The 20th century, of course, completely failed at building these communist societies because of many reasons, including how every single one of them turned authoritarian and there was a crazy guy in power who was controlling everything. But I mainly focused on 4 of them because those are the most cited usually and the most popular amongst like everything that I read basically. There was a problem with the economic calculation, so basically it was hard for anyone to know how much to produce and how much things are valued, because without markets and prices and stocks and everything that capitalism is, it's very hard to know like what the demand is. And usually for providers or producers or anything like that, there's a supply and demand in capitalism, which is like a feedback loop, and because of this feedback loop, prices and quantities of produce is always being updated because it's always getting the feedback. In communism, this is not the case most of the time. There's also a problem with this because in the ussr or during the communist times in the 20th century, everything was done on paper or on very slow computers, and the technologies were not advanced enough for some people or some governments to fully decide on things or keep track of the lives of millions of people on just paper and pen, and figure out this entire system basically where everyone would be treated equally on paper and pen. Of course, they did not try to do that most of the time, and it was just a facade, but even if they were trying to do this, it would be almost impossible because everything was just on paper. And there were like billions and billions of variables, and there were also words involved, and anyway. And also usually decision makers were relying on this data that was not even collected properly, and even if it was collected properly, it was probably falsified or it was probably outdated because they were not updating things. There was also a lack of incentives, and specifically when you're working and you know that everyone is giving and getting the same salary, the same life, the same, like, no rewards basically, and workers, managers, everyone is basically put on the same level, then you are not really incentivized to innovate or try to do things differently or try to, I don't know, become a better person or become a better person in the company itself. So people had very little motivation to improve things or make things more productive. Just take any kind of initiative. Even if they were trying to take initiative, which brings me to the 4th point, most of the communist parties were very authoritarian. So there was, again, a crazy guy in power and then a crazy party in power, and you couldn't even really criticize them because they will shut you down. All of the power of the country was centralized in one specific party. That does not need to be the case, but it was the case back then. And usually it wasn't even a party, it was one person, one guy. I should be clear about that. So anyone who tried to innovate or criticize or say something, anything, they would be shut down, and there would be high extreme consequences about it. Like, I'm from Romania and I know firsthand what my grandparents were going through when it was the time of communism, because there were people who were telling, like, they were called tellers, and they would tell anything that they heard that was against the party. There's no incentive for people to problem solve, there's no incentive for people to learn or grow or do anything basically, because one, there's someone who wants them to think the same, everyone thinking the same, which is not necessarily tied directly to communism, it's just tied to the authoritarian perspective. And also in many cases these countries were very poor when they were trying to do this regime, which is hard because the party that was occupying this whole thing was rich, and then everyone else was staying in lines for 3, 4, 5 hours for getting bread in the morning, which is kind of crazy to think about right now. So what's different now, and why I was thinking about this more closely, and why I think this is a very interesting topic to talk about, is AI is growing extremely rapidly right now, and we have data for basically everything. And this is because we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Google, we have everything. Every single thing that you ever did or have done or want to do is in there somewhere, or even like every single thing that you thought about would be somewhere in those databases of these big companies. We have so much data, and because of this data we've managed to create so crazy machine learning models, which are basically AIs, that if you ask them, they can solve a lot of the problems of the world, and they can build extremely sophisticated systems and keep track of them, because the computers we have right now are more than able to do this kind of computations. Of course, robotics is also growing, and with AI it will grow even more and more and more, because now you have autonomous machines, so basically machines that can make their own decisions and that can do stuff that humans can also do, but they can also think about the stuff that they're doing. So if you actually think about these things and the scale and growth rates that AI is growing at, and how much it can do right now, and especially if you train it right, how much it would be able to do in the future if it doesn't completely destroy our world, which is a possibility, of course. But let's think of like the positive way in which AI grows, and it's going at the rate that it's growing right now too, because I don't think you can stop this rate at this point. And we have agents and we have robots that can think about extremely complex systems and fairness and our definition of fairness, and make the decisions that those authoritarian leaders could not make before. And it can also make a lot of things for us if we make it in a way that benefits us, not some billionaires, which is hard because they are the ones investing in these things, but yeah, doesn't matter. So in an ideal world, we could have these machines that can produce the products that usually workers in a factory would produce, and they can collect data from every single customer, so they know what people want, and they would be able to collect data on everyone in their country, and they would know what people need, what people lack, what people would desire to make basically, and what the problems are, and they could produce those products that we need based on the need that we have, not necessarily the desire to always have more and more and more and more and more, which brought us the sustainability problem that we have. So you could have AI managers that take into account all of these things, and you wouldn't even need prices at this point, because you would know exactly what people need and desire and want and stuff like that. Of course, humans are greedy and they always want more, but if you focus on relationships, if the society focuses on like overall happiness, overall relationship, health and hobbies and passions and things that actually make us happy, not working at a computer for 8 hours a day, then maybe, just maybe, we will stop wanting luxurious cars or luxurious apartments. If you do really want that, you would be able to get it. But I think the majority of people would not want that if they have every single other need satisfied. And then this profits from automation that we have. Even if praxis exists, even if there's a form of communistic capitalism, there will be a lot of automation happening, and there will be a lot of profits coming from this automation, because you don't need to pay workers anymore. These profits can be distributed equally from now on. They're universal basic income, which is basically a system that provides an income, a stable income for every single person in the society. And of course, it covers your basic needs but nothing else, but that's usually what people like. This is a concept that is especially popular right now in economy, because we will have a lot of profits that are not necessarily associated with one worker. So you can have this universal basic income, or you can have some free goods that people receive when they need those goods. And because of that, you will not need people to work full-time. Most people on this planet will not need to work full-time from now on. If we follow this idea of not a capitalistic world where we are depressed because we don't have any jobs, because AI will take over the jobs, but we are using the profits of the AI's automation to fund basically our creative freedoms and our life freedom in general. You can have roles that are creative, that are social, that are making your community better, because in our history, especially in the hunter-gatherer time or just in tribe times, we were not killing that many people. We were not always at war. We were not always in hunger or dying or hunting. Most of the time we were just enjoying time with other people, and we were enjoying time with our families, we were enjoying time with our friends. Now we are not doing that at all. I mean, maybe we are, but not at the level that we were before, and definitely we're not greeting the people in our community. I'm in Tokyo right now and no one greets each other. It's kind of actually crazy. This is the case for most big cities, and we are not focused on community anymore, which we could be if we stopped thinking of work that much and these tasks that we need to do, and which in turn will give us time to focus on our relationships, our personal growth, our experiences. So yeah, it is possible to have this system, especially now, especially with this amount of data, especially with this amount of intelligence that we created that is outside of the human body. Because humans, again, are very greedy, and if you put someone in that power of creating a system, they will go crazy and they will try to ruin the world, which has happened a lot of times in our history. But if you put a robot and the robot is very well trained and very well limited, then it would think very much in an objective way. If again we don't fuck it up, and then it will take over the world, but hopefully that will not happen. Of course, for this to happen, you have to have some sort of a universal basic income, and it has to be run by a system, AI system probably, or algorithm-based system, and these funds are produced from the robot-made profits or the robot-made products. And this ensures that everyone on this planet has a baseline for living. Of course, this is not as simple as it is, or as I'm saying, it is, because yeah, we still have wars and we still have conflicts and we still have a lot of problems in the world, but in an ideal world, this could happen. I think another requirement is that the AI itself should not be controlled by one single person or one single company or one single party, because then we would end up in the authoritarian life that we would have. And this will be hard to put in practice because, for example, OpenAI is controlled by a single company, and whatever they say and whatever they do, it goes, and there's very little regulations against what they can do. And I don't think they are thinking of the good of the world necessarily when they're making their decisions. They're thinking of money, they're thinking of the excitement of producing something new, and they're thinking of their competition. So it will be hard to shift these companies from wanting to pursue these money-related or growth-related goals to a goal that basically makes it better for the entire world. And as a third point, I think all of the algorithms should be open source, which would have a lot of risks in terms of the fact that if you put that algorithm out there, then bad people, quote unquote, can use them to go against the algorithm itself. But I do think that the algorithms who run the economy should be to some extent open source, so that there's no like a black box. You don't know what's happening, you know exactly what's happening and how it works, and you should also be taught about it in school. But it should have enough security so that people cannot break into it, which again will be hard to do. Feasibility, can this happen? There's a possibility. I truly believe that there's a possibility, but there are a lot of things that need to change in our society, especially the growth mindset, like, oh, everything has to grow at all costs. I have to grow my life, I have to grow my business, I have to grow, I don't know, my money in the family. And it should shift to something more sustainable or focused on well-being. And robotics and AI should be affordable and energy efficient, which they are not right now. The models should be advancing enough so that they can create these systems, and they can also keep these systems in place, and they can also secure the systems. And also societies must be okay with democratizing their wealth, and ownership will change, of course, or the definition of ownership would change. Do I think this will be a better system than capitalism, especially in the age of AI? Yes, because we are greedy, and it is a powerful tool, and it will grow a lot, but it's also very inefficient, it's also very costly. Building LLMs and building these databases is not good for the environment, and it does make very few people rich, like 1% of the population of the world. It makes them very rich, and then the rest of the world will be very poor otherwise. And we will have a lot of trillionaires, I believe so, in the future. And I did take this idea from the podcast, The Diary of the CEO, their last episode or most recent episode or something like that, but that will probably not be the most recent episode when I publish this. But yeah, you should definitely watch that. I'll link it down below. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's a good exercise to think about, especially now. And I do think that this is entirely in our power. Of course, there's a lot of dynamics in the world that makes the world so complex that will make it hard to make the decisions that will lead us to this world. China versus the US, and the constant growth and the competition in AI and everything. It will make it very hard to make these kind of systems and democratize and open source all of the algorithms. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is very different from what I normally make, but I think it was still an interesting thought process, and I think it's very relevant to what's happening in the world right now. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy this video too. Love you guys. Have a best day of your life. Kisses. Bye bye.